Ladies and gentlemen, and now please welcome former foster and kinship parent, adoptive mom, and board president of the Adoptive and Foster Family Coalition, Ms. Sarah Gerstenzang.
Never been on Broadway, but I'm starting to get a feeling for it. Good evening, everyone. Welcome. I want to welcome you on behalf of our board, our advisory council, and staff. These people are some of the most collaborative, kind, hardworking, and thoughtful people anywhere. And I'm so glad you have joined us tonight. So in my side hustle as a therapist, I have learned that understanding your own story, especially if it is filled with challenges, as well as hearing others' stories, is an innate way of healing we have as human beings. I hope you will be inspired tonight by the stories you hear and will join our coalition by referring a family who needs our services by donating or working with us. It took a lot of time and energy to produce this show, and I want to thank our development co-chairs, Rebecca and Kathy, and their committee. A lot of people throughout the coalition who participated. Our executive director, Pat O'Brien, all of our staff, our speakers tonight, as well as Barbara Herel for making this happen. And a quick note about the show: as part of the child welfare community, we are sensitive to the issues of oversharing and story ownership. With this in mind, during our writing workshops, our storytellers took great care to focus on their own experiences with the support of all those mentioned in their stories. So I hope you enjoy it tonight and look forward to seeing you after the show. Back to you, Tony.
Thank you so much, Sarah. And now, please welcome to the stage your host for the evening, the dazzling, the delightful, and the delirious Barbara Herel.
What a wonderful introduction. Thank you, Tony, and thank you for being my husband.
My pleasure.
Oh, my goodness. I am just so excited to be here in person, fully dressed from head to toe. And of course, we're also online at home in pajama pants. But we're all here to support the incredible work of the coalition and to celebrate the families that they serve. Tonight's event is a storytelling show, as you can tell by the rug probably and the stool. And I've been working with storytellers for many years, and it is such a powerful medium. So has anybody been to a storytelling show before? Yes. Where have you been? Where have you, anybody? Oh, wow. How delightfully creepy. Did you like it? Oh, nice one. Ba-dum-bum. Did you like it? Oh, great. Well, little secret, this one's going to be even more amazing. What I love so much about storytelling is that stories give us a deeper understanding of ourselves and our families. They help us create meaning out of our past. They have a hand in shaping our current lives, and they allow us to pass on who we are to the next generation. And let me tell you that the adoption and foster community is rich with stories. We got stories from every which way. We have adoptee, birth parents, foster adoption parents, grandparents, siblings, and we are very fortunate to have tonight 5 of these stories. And you'll find that the stories are surprising and touching and joyful and even heartbreaking. But all of them are true. Just a little bit about me, a little my story. I'm a writer and a producer and a mom by way of domestic adoption. And I got married a little later in life and wanted to have children. And one day in my early 40s, I heard this little voice inside of me that said, think about adoption. And that voice came from my tired, old, dusty ovaries.
It's a beautiful story.
Yeah, thank it is. What else? We've got a lot of fun surprises tonight. I love a good giveaway. Does everyone have a raffle ticket? Yes? Okay, good. So what I'd like to do right now is we'll draw a number out of the fishbowl and someone is going to win a great prize. So let's practice the reaction you'll make if we announce your number. Okay, so everybody on the count of 3, pretend that you've won.
Whoa.
1, 2, 3.
Whoa.
Okay, that was very nice, but these are really great prizes. So let me hear a bigger reaction. Okay, ready? 1, 2, 3. Wow! Okay. Now, where we don't want to have any reaction is with your cell phone. And Tony has something to say about that.
That's right, Barbara. To silence your phone, just click on the Settings tab and simply bypass your ringer and alert notifications with your 16-digit access code. If you don't know your access code, you can easily create one through any iOS protocol matrix. The other option is to just put your phone on mute. Thanks. Back to you, Barbara.
Thank you, Tony. You see why I married him. He's just so technically advanced. Okay, so are we ready? Let's begin. Our first storyteller is an adoptive mom, and her story is something a lot of adoptive parents and hopeful adoptive parents struggle with, and that is fear. Fear of what could happen when you open up a closed adoption, for instance. So now, please welcome Valerie Joseph, facing her fears in her story, What Happens to an Open Heart.
When our little girl came to us, she was almost 6 years old and had been in foster care for about half her life. I remember when I saw her photo for the very first time, she was gazing directly at the camera. Her eyes were beautiful with very curly lashes. I saw her effervescent smile, and the word sparkly came to mind. Her name was Zanea. The instant we saw that photo, my husband and I, Jim, just knew, that's it, we're done. In our mind, Zanea was already ours. Shortly after that day, on Sunday, October 1st, 2006, Zanea arrived at our house dressed in a poofy pink party dress. And with that, our lives together began. We had a court-ordered closed adoption. Her birth mother had lost her parental rights. And Jim and I thought about all the upheavals Zanea had experienced in her very young life up until that point, being moved from foster home to supposedly adoptive home to another foster home. And how she managed to maintain her sparkle was truly amazing to me. And it never occurred to me, actually, to blame or feel judgmental towards her birth mom. I read in the social worker's report that during her and Zenaya's last court-mandated meeting, she fussed over her daughter's hair and wept. And so I ached for her. Jim and I were committed to staying in touch with Zenaya's birth mom, and I can't explain why, other than it just felt like the right thing to do. So we decided we would send school pictures and news of Zenaya's interests and adventures. But Jim and I were protective too of Zenaya's attachment to us. We thought contact with her birth mom would complicate matters and put an added strain on what felt like a fragile connection. So we didn't share our address, and we got a P.O. box in a adjoining town. In those early years together as a new family, Zenaya was sometimes deeply hostile to me. Therapists told me that this was common for the child to devalue the adoptive mom in preference to the birth mom. And that made sense, especially considering that it had only been a few months before coming to us that Zenaya had seen her birth mom for that final court-mandated and supervised meeting. So despite the difficulty of dealing with her antagonism and opposition, I ached for Zenaya as well. When we sent off our letters and photos, her birth mom wrote back notes full of grateful appreciation, and we corresponded through snail mail until Zenaya was around 13 years old. When she was 13, she tracked down her birth mom through the internet, spoke with her, and naturally wanted to see her. At that point, Jim and I felt that even though it was not the timing we would have preferred, because Zenaya was not fully bonded with me, we didn't want to set up a situation where Zenaya would try to organize a meeting secretly, hide the relationship, and become even more bonded to her birth mom. So yeah, we were living the fear of a lot of adoptive parents, but it seemed to us that we wanted to join with Zenaya's birth mom rather than be in opposition to her or in opposition to Zenaya's connection with her. Prior to this time, Zenaya had wanted to know more about the circumstances of her removal from her birth mom. And in bits and pieces and very carefully, we shared some of the information that we had. We set up visits with the social worker and former foster families. We let her read small parts of the social worker's reports. We shared newspaper clippings. We traveled to the hospital where she had been born. And we met some of the people who knew her before she was placed into foster care. Jim and I decided we would meet with the birth mom first, without Zenaya, to see for ourselves if we thought it would be safe for Zenaya to be around this person. Would the meeting be too triggering or traumatic? We had a lot of concerns. But it turns out our concerns were totally unfounded. We had a lovely visit with Takia. And then we had another one when we brought Zenaya. That was also quite lovely. And then we had many visits after that. But through her teenage years, Zenaya had an increasingly hard time with attachment to me specifically. And I imagine that part of the problem was that she thought she needed to be loyal to her birth mom, that she thought she had to choose her real mom, which of course wouldn't and couldn't be me. And it shattered me, frankly. But I resigned myself to the fact that this would be my reality, that I would be the mother of a child who didn't respect me and didn't accept me as her mom. But I also decided that I would love her no matter what. And then I heard 4 simple words that changed my life. Those words came from a Mr. Patrick J. O'Brien, which probably isn't surprising to most of you here tonight. Now, on the face of it, what Pat said might not sound like a big deal, but it was a big deal to me. What he said was this: she has 2 moms. It wasn't just the words, it was the way he said it, so matter-of-factly. And it stopped me in my tracks. It was as if my heart that had always been open to loving my daughter was now opening more to understand something deeply and beautifully profound. Zanea has 2 moms. Shortly afterwards, literally like a day or 2, I had the opportunity to tell Zanea those exact words: you have 2 moms. And I could see how those words shifted her reality. And in real time, I heard her say those same words to a friend. I could feel her relief at having the language to understand and talk about an aspect of her life. Plus, it meant that she didn't have to choose who was the real mom. She has 2, and we're both real. Over the years, not only did we get to know Takia, but also Zanea's brother, a sister, and some other family members. And one Christmas, we met Zanea's grandmother, the mother of Takia, Francine. Francine and I immediately liked each other. We were fast friends. She was a few years younger than I and instantly embraced me as a family member. She was a proud and unapologetic member of NA, Narcotics Anonymous. And I even went with her to some NA functions. They had some conventions and things. The more remarkable thing about Francine to me was that at these functions, she would grab my hand and go around introducing me as her granddaughter's mom, explaining the whole story about Zanea being with her daughter and her daughter losing custody and Zanea being adopted. She would do this whole Cliff Notes version of the story in about a minute. And I was with her on more than one occasion where she would tell it over and over again. She told the story of her daughter losing custody of Zanea with absolutely no embarrassment or shame, because she knew that reality is what happens, and our job is to learn, grow, change, and ultimately accept. She was the embodiment of the Serenity Prayer. Sadly, on March 10th of this year, when Zanea was 21, Francine passed away from breast cancer. Zanea and I visited almost every day during the last 2 weeks of her life, and we were there just hours before she passed. And on our visits, we encountered many of Francine's friends who warmly greeted me and seemed to know exactly who I was. For the funeral, friends and family were told to wear purple and white, Francine's favorite colors. I was invited to wear those colors, and I spent hours shopping for colors in shades I never wear. But I came to the service dressed appropriately, but I was also prepared to sit in the back if the family wanted me to sit there. Instead, I was directed to sit in the second row, and Zanea chose to sit next to me, directly behind her birth mom and Francine's mom. So Zenaya's great-grandmother. During the service, they had a slideshow of photographs of Francine with various friends and family members. And always one for a good party or a photo op. There was Francine with a coconut bra and grass skirt, with Zenaya and Takia also in coconut bras and grass skirts. There was Francine dropping it like it's hot. There was Francine in an ugly Christmas sweater and a hairband studded with Christmas lights. And then there was a photo of Francine with people maybe from NA, and lo and behold, I was standing there too, grinning for the camera. And at that moment, Takia turned to me with a smile, and she pointed meaningfully at the screen as if to say, see, you're a part of this family. And I'll never forget it. I will always be grateful to Francine, one of my daughter's grandmothers. And I will always be grateful to Takia, my daughter's other mother. Without being ordered and without intending it, we created an open adoption. And that's because we have something that could never, that could never be mandated, that could never be court ordered. We had hearts that were open to each other. My heart was open to Takia, and Takia's heart was open to me. And Zenaya, my smart, vivacious, courageous, headstrong, difficult, hardworking, inspiring, and loving daughter, has a heart that was now open to both of us, her two moms. Thank you.
Oh, are you all right? Oh my goodness, that was incredible. Thank you so much. Yes, we've forgotten something. All right, ready for our next story. Is from Ani Keene, who left a nice paying career to work for the nonprofit You Gotta Believe. As the Director of Youth Services, Ani and her team find forever families for older kids in foster care. And as a young adult who'd aged out of the foster care system, Ani knows firsthand the importance of having family in your corner. Now, here's Ani with her story, Family No Matter What.
I entered into the foster care system for the second time when I was 17 years old. It was only supposed to be an emergency placement. I was told I would be at the house for 2 weeks. 2 weeks lasted 4 years. When I saw my new foster mom for the first time, my first thought was, wow, pretty cool. She picked us up from the train station. Then my next thought was, wow, she had a nice warm smile and a nice soft tone. We drove up to a big house, 12 bedrooms, 6 bathrooms. And as soon as we pulled into the driveway, I turned to my new foster mother and asked, can my foster sister move in with us? My social worker quickly turned to me and said, at least wait till you go to the house before you ask for someone else to move in. So as I walked to the house, I continued to ask my foster mom and tell her not to worry. Me and my foster sister will share the same room. She won't take up any extra space. I just couldn't help myself, no matter how much of an evil eye my social worker was giving me. But I continued on. My foster mother said that she would take in my sister. You see, my foster sister was only 6 months younger than me. And I only met her 2 weeks before our previous foster home was being closed. And I felt a strong need to protect her from the foster care system and the people in it. When I entered, I knew I had to become independent and strong because the system had a way of hardening you. I learned that I couldn't trust the adults around me, and I didn't want harm to come her way the way that it came to me. My foster mother, the very next day, my foster sister moved in, and I was so excited. We was ecstatic. That only lasted 2 weeks before we got into a huge argument and didn't speak for months. In the meanwhile, my mother had 6 more teenage girls into the house between the ages of 17 and 18 years old. I went to work, I went to school, I ignored everyone. One day, my foster sisters was trying to mess with me. This is another foster sister. She was a real bully. I got into a physical altercation. I told my foster mother, "You don't have to say it. I already know. I got into a fight and now I have to leave." She stared at me for a moment and said, "I used to fight with my brothers all the time. That never resulted in me losing my home. You're my daughter." Now I'm the one staring at her in disbelief, like, "You're such a new foster parent. You don't even know what you're talking about," as I continue to act. But the very next day, we went to the foster care agency, and my foster mother walked in the room and told everyone, "No one is leaving my home. We are a family. We are going through something, and we need your help." The very next day, we started family therapy. That was my first lesson of forgiveness and unconditional commitment. My first understanding is that families don't always have to get along. I started to learn that it's really about relationships, is about staying together, nurturing, and building. And we did. My sisters and I had arguments and disagreements. My mother and I argued, but I knew that conflict didn't have to break us. So I was working and going to school and checking in with my foster care agency. My casework was really happy since I was turning 21. They told me about a supervised independent living program. I was super excited. I go home and I tell my foster mom all about it. And the great news is that I get new luggage. Super excited. As I'm explaining this new program to my foster mother, she seems to be getting more upset. She's actually turning red. She takes a deep breath and then she goes, "You have a family. You learn independent living skills in a family. You don't need the program for that." The next day, I was out of the program and I had to return my luggage, and I was super upset. But I was surprised because I really didn't understand my decision about going into the supervised independent living program in the first place. Nobody asked me if I wanted to stay with my foster mother, and no one said, "Hey, let's talk to your foster mother if you can stay." No one, I didn't even know it was an option for me to stay with her. My foster mother did teach me the independent living skills, like how to go grocery shopping, how to budget, how to pay bills, maintain a checking account, and best of all, I learned it all at home. Not like my peers. I didn't have to worry about where I was going to live because I had my foster mom. But most importantly, my foster mom paid attention. She paid attention and knew that it took me longer to complete assignments. I was reading and writing. I was reading on a second grade level and writing on a fourth grade level when she found the resources that I needed to improve my reading and writing skills. When I completed the program, I was writing on a ninth grade level and reading on a 12th grade level. And because of that program, I was able to get a college degree. If it wasn't for my foster mom, my choice would have been minimum wage at best. When I turned 21, my birthday was actually a celebration and not a doomsday because I had my foster mom. I moved out shortly after to my own apartment. I asked my foster mom if I could come over for Thanksgiving. She said, "Of course, dear." And after a while, I stopped asking. I just knew I always had a place to go home to. I remember thinking, wow, she's no longer legally my foster mother, but she's still in my life. Then it hit me that everything she's been saying all these years were true. I didn't feel the emotional need to get adopted at that point. I was too busy focusing on my life plan, graduating college at 28, getting married at 29, having my first child at 30. And then when I was 22 years old, something tragic happened and I wound up in a hospital. As I was in a hospital, it came so strong, a feeling of I had no legal connection to anyone. Suddenly, I needed the world to know that I was connected and loved by someone. I wanted to move forward with adoption. I remember telling my foster mother that I wanted to be legally adopted. I want people to know that you're my mom. She was happy. The process took a little while. I was legally adopted at 24 years old, along with my younger foster sister who moved in with me the following day. At that time, I was working at a child welfare system, and the social workers or judges or people that I interacted with, they found out that I was going to be legally adopted, and they asked, why get adopted now? I asked them, who do you call when you're having a good day or a bad day? Did you graduate college? Who attended? Do you have children? Who is there to support you? Their response was often my parents or family members. I told them I deserve the same thing too. Life doesn't end at 18 or 21. It's just the beginning. And regardless of how old a person is, I'm almost 40 now, we all need that life connection as a parent or just a parental figure. We all need to be claimed and loved. I was and still am deserving of that claim. I deserve to be adopted too. The end.
Oh, come on. I don't believe that. All right. Well, you notice I'm utilizing the stool. So we get out those raffle tickets because it's time to have a raffle. Tell them what they could win, Tony.
That's right, Barbara. One lucky audience member will win a digital camera by Sony. Be the hero of any backyard barbecue or family gathering with this shiny and sleek Sony camera. And when you get tired of taking all those photos, kick back with photojournalist Nancy Borowick's book, The Family Imprint, A Daughter's Portrait of Love and Loss. Donated by Nancy Borowick, Kathy Urbina, and Sony. The value of this incredible prize package is worth $250. Wow. Yes, nothing says family like a digital camera and a coffee table book. Back to you, Barbara.
And now, there we go. All right, ready? 2, lights. Oh, hey. Whoa, hello, good looking people. All right. 2 4 0 2 9 1 0. No? What? I've got no name. No? I'll read it again. 2 4 0 2 9 1 0. Anyone close to that number? No? Should we do another one? No name. This is exciting. Ready? Oh, it's the same number. No. 240-2871. What? Woo!
Nice.
Wow, this was not rigged. Wasn't rigged. Oh, that is so exciting. Well, hang on to your raffle tickets or find them because we're going to have another raffle coming up shortly. But first, we have, yes, one question.
People who came in late, can I give them their free raffle ticket now?
Sure,
Yes. Quickly. Don't go back there. Do you have the book? Oh my goodness. And let's turn out those lights. Pat, can you get the lights? Oh, Vanessa, thank you. Oh, that was exciting. Glad I brought deodorant with me in the back. Okay, we have another fabulous adoptive mom story. It's from Andrea Marinelli. And tonight, Andrea shares her hopes and dreams of becoming a family in her aptly named story, Becoming a Family. Please welcome Andrea. Yes.
Hello, and thank you for that great welcome. Okay, so here's my story. After 3 years of infertility treatments and no baby from all our efforts, my husband Michael and I began exploring adoption. Like every wannabe parent, Michael and I had visions of lively family dinners, snuggling up on the couch for family movie night, and going on Disney vacations. Michael promised he'd be the one going on Space Mountain. Definitely not me. I knew he'd be a great daddy, loving, patient, lots of fun, and I wouldn't be too shabby in the mommy department. So in 2003, we became certified foster parents. 2 weeks later, we got a call about a sibling group for adoption. That was fast. There were 2 boys and a girl, all under 5. The boys were 4.5 and 3.5, and the girl was 2.5. Michael and I were to meet the children at a group home the following Friday. I will never forget that nervous drive across Long Island, imagining what would happen when we got there. The big question was, would they like us? Thank God we brought toys along to break the ice. We parked in front of the group home, and as we were getting out of our car, the children got out of a small white van. There they were, the 3 of them, running in different directions. One of them wasn't even wearing shoes. It was love at first sight. Their names were Michael, Christian, and Tiffany. As we played with the kids, laughing and chatting, I couldn't help but think how lost and alone they must feel. I felt my heart tug. The social worker stopped by and said, "I see you met the children." She gave us a smile and a thumbs up. We could bring the children to our home that Sunday for a visit. We said our goodbyes to the children. When I turned and looked back, they were standing there watching us as we left. The memory remains in my heart. Then my husband took my hand and whispered, "Those children need our love." See, didn't I tell you he'd be the greatest daddy? Then Sunday, I woke up so excited I couldn't wait to pick up the kids. Michael and I talked endlessly about the things we wanted to show them when they arrived at our home. For a change, I was the one who kept saying, "Michael, hurry up and get ready already." When we arrived at the group home, I noticed the kids were wearing clothes that didn't fit particularly well. A thought flashed in my mind. I'm sure they couldn't bring much with them when they left their family home. My heart tugged again. Then the kids climbed into the brand new booster seats and off we went. Between our cats, the toys, and the thoughtful friends and relatives who stopped by to meet the children, gifts in hand, it was such a wonderful visit. At some point, the oldest boy, Michael, took my husband aside and said, "You have this big house and no kids. We could be your kids and live here with you." When my husband told me this, there went my heart again. Monday morning came and we called our caseworker, and in less than 24 hours, we became foster parents. Our busy lives got even busier with school, dance, t-ball, soccer practices, and weekly meetings with the children's birth father, Tony, and their older brother, Brandon. I would often arrive at the visits with Tiffany in one hand and a pull-up in another, handing both of them off to Tony, telling him, "Daddy, your daughter needs to be changed." Tony would smile and say, "Well, Mommy, I see how much love you give her and the boys. I feel so relieved." I know Tony didn't have it easy and was very upset when the children were taken from him. My husband and I had many conversations, providing Tony with support and understanding. Those weekly visits at DSS turned out to be beneficial for all of us. Not only did Michael and I speak with Tony, but also his mother, Rose, the children's grandmother. After 2 years, we were told we could adopt the children. April 2nd, 2005 was our adoption day. Here's something we didn't initially realize. Our oldest was named Michael Anthony, the same exact name as my husband. So now our son became Michael Anthony Jr. What are the odds? My husband went to court on adoption day, and he told me how relieved Tony looked, that Tony patted his shoulder and said, "Well, they're your kids now. I know they are lucky to have you both." We did have a court agreement to wait until the kids were older and settled before reuniting. Over the years, I sent pictures of the children to Grandma Rose, but never heard back. My husband and I were upset we lost contact for the children's sake and also for Tony's. For the next 15 years, we provided age-appropriate facts to the children about their adoption so they would know they were always loved by me and Daddy and by Tony, Grandma, and Big Brother Brandon. It wasn't always an easy journey, but whatever came up, we faced it together as a family. Then one day in December 2018, our family was taken by surprise. Our daughter, Tiffany, who was now 18, woke up crying hysterically. "Mom, I found our birth dad on Facebook." My husband and I talked to the children about searching for their birth family together and wondered if Tiffany was crying because she thought we'd be angry that she searched by herself. So I let her know how happy I was for her. It turned out she was crying for another reason. Tiffany's birth dad, Tony, messengered pictures of her and her brothers. These were the very same photos I had mailed to the children's grandmother all those years ago. The photos were well worn and creased, from being open and reopened. Their dad kept them folded in his wallet all these years. Tiffany's tears were tears of knowing for sure she was loved by her father, of knowing her brothers were loved by their father. These were tears of joy to have finally found him. We learned that we lost touch with Grandma because she lost her home in the Sandy storm. Tony shared that she got married and that he had gotten married and had a baby, another son, and that his mother passed away soon after. Brandon shared how he had been searching for his siblings his whole life. My heart broke for him. I asked Brandon, "Do you want to come back to the house to meet your brothers?" He did indeed. The children got together with Brandon every weekend to make up for lost time. Soon my husband and I were inviting the children's birth family to our home for the holidays. The following year at Christmas time, Tony included us in his family tradition of cutting down a Christmas tree. As I share these moments with all of you, my heart is tugging all over the place. I especially wanted to tell my story tonight because today is Michael, my husband, Michael Anthony Sr., his birthday. On the same day we learned the children were freed for adoption, my husband learned he had end-stage renal failure. I donated my kidney to Michael. That's how perfect a match we were. Michael received an extra 14 years to see his children grow to the strong, resilient adults they are today. Sadly, my husband passed away on January 10th of this year from COVID. He will forever be in all of our hearts. I am beyond grateful that we got to share this journey together. If it weren't for the prospect of becoming a family, I don't know how either one of us would have made it through. I still think back to the day when we first met our children and Michael whispered to me, "Those children need our love." He was right. They very much needed the love of the family that we've become, Mommy, Daddy, and their first daddy. I'm so happy our family was meant to be. Thank you, everyone.
Oh, that was lovely. Oh, Tiffany's here. Aw. Okay. How many times have you seen this question come up in adoption forums? When should we tell our child he was adopted? Well, I think you'll have your answer, excuse me, after listening to our next story from Chester Jackson, an adoptee. Please welcome Chester as he shares, "Ask me no questions, I'll tell you no lies."
I was born a poor black child. No, that's I had to do it. I've been thinking about that for a while. I had to do it. In the spring of, it was the spring of 1990. I was 32 years old. My wife, Karen, and I were taking a trip to Toronto, Canada, just for the weekend to get away. In those days, you were able to get into Canada with just a copy of your birth certificate. Being a last minute type of guy, I waited until the last minute, the day before we were actually leaving, to look through my personal papers for my birth certificate. It wasn't in my desk drawer. It wasn't in the unlocked little fireproof safe we kept behind the curtain. In fact, it wasn't anywhere in the house. So I went down to the Bureau of Vital Statistics and I waited in line and I waited in line and I waited in line. So finally, I was standing in front of the clerk window and I asked for a copy of my birth certificate. My name, Chester Mitchell Jackson. Date of birth, January 22nd, 1958. Birthplace, New York City. And finally, my mother's name, Geneva Jackson. Yeah, it is a pretty name. The clerk is typing this all in, type, 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 type. She looks up at me, looks back at the screen, type, 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 type. And she looks at me and says, "Any other names?" Any other names? No. No, that's my information. She looks back, she types some more, looks back at me, types some more, and says, "You're not in there." What do you mean I'm not in there? I guess she was sensing my irritation. So she does one of these, telling me to come closer. I lean into a small plexiglass window, and she says, pointing at a phone on the wall, "Go over there, pick up that phone, call your mother, and ask her what name is on your birth certificate." That probably should have been a clue. I was a bit miffed, like a grumpy teenager, I think. I said, okay. So I go over to the phone. I pick up the phone. I dial my mother. "Hello?" I say, "Mom, I'm over here in the Bureau of Vital Statistics trying to get a copy of my birth certificate. The clerk told me to ask you what name is on my birth certificate." Nothing. Not a peep. I was like, "Yeah, mother, this should not be a difficult question." Again, it's an audible silence. And finally, she says, "Tell them to try Desi Lee Mitchell." Desi Lee Mitchell? What? I said. Who the blank is Desi Lee Mitchell? Another pause. I'm like, "Ma?" She sighs heavily and says, "It doesn't matter. She's been dead a long time now." In that instant, I was a little kid again, remembering when my older brother told me in all seriousness, "Mommy found you in the trash and brought you home." I remember running to my mother and asking her, "Was that true?" Her answer, a curt, "Well, what do you think?" I could sense her unhappiness simply by me asking the question. So I went silent. I shut the door where all my hurt lived, thereby keeping the terrible secret at bay. Now, as a grown man, I continue to shut the door. I say, "Okay, thank you," and I hang up. I make my way back to the clerk. She's looking at me with an expression on her face that said, "Oh Lord, here's another one." I guess my face betrayed my confusion, and I tell her, "Try Desi Lee Mitchell." She goes back to her keyboard. She, kind of shaking her head, shaking her head. And I said, "Okay, I need a copy of the birth certificate." With her eyes still down, she asked, "Do you have any identification in this name?" I said, "No. I don't even know who that is," I'm thinking to myself. After a few awkward moments of her staring at me, she says, "You could get into Canada with a copy of your voter registration card." With that piece of wisdom tucked in my pocket, I turn around and leave. I go back home. My wife asks, "Did you get your birth certificate?" No. I tell her the story. We go off to Canada. I don't call my mother back. I don't run down there and find out what's going on. I just put my head down, keep trudging forward. I keep going silent. I had all kinds of theories about what was happening, but my wife knew there was only one explanation, the one I refused to recognize. "I'll bet you're adopted," she said over and over and over again. I just couldn't wrap my head around the idea of being adopted. I mean, if that's true, if I was somehow adopted, who am I? In any event, we spend our 2 days, 2 somber days, I might add, in Canada. We come back. I immediately hightail it up to my mother's apartment on 135th Street. I let myself in. I find her on her bed, smoking a cigarette, watching The Price is Right. I come in, I sit down on the little chair that was there for me to sit when I came to visit, and I'm watching Bob Barker too. I sat there in front of my mother, waiting patiently like a child on Christmas morning, full of anxious anxiety and anticipation. We stared at one another for a moment. I smiled my most reassuring smile. My mother groaned and looked away. She took a long, noisy breath, sat up, stone-faced like a prisoner before the parole board, handed me a carefully folded document, averting any eye contact. I sat holding my birth certificate, a literal cloud of Bel Air cigarette smoke and my mother's palatable fear hanging like one more invisible weight around my neck. On the brink of long overdue answers to questions too big to be asked in childhood, I felt light as a feather, deep cleansing breaths, joyful vindication, almost too much to hide. I was born again in that moment, whole in an instant. A lifetime spent wondering what was wrong with me had unconsciously been heavy as hell. Despite numerous protestations to the contrary, no one could ever convince me that there wasn't something terribly off kilter in my house. So I sit, relieved that what I dreaded, consciously and unconsciously, was merely a matter of me misreading my mother's anxiety and fear. I was not defective. I was not incapable of making something of my life. I was free. "Don't hate me," she whispered. "Don't hate me." I shifted to embrace my mother with peace in my heart and a smile on my face, holding what felt like the most truth I had ever known. My mother nestled against my shoulder, ashamed and broken. The curtain had been removed, and there she sat, judged and sentenced. My mother's eyes told me that she could not handle my rejection that day. I sucked up my glee, and I assured her that no piece of paper could ever erase a lifetime of love and devotion. Shame filled the room like tear gas, making it hard for either of us to breathe. I held my mother, hoping to comfort and shield her from the death of her lie. The most hurtful thing of all will always be her openly grieving the fact that she was not allowed to go to her grave with the lie intact. Somehow it seemed she believed that our mother-child bond was held together by the lie instead of the opposite. The lie created the only fissure in our bond, a hairline fracture that never got a chance to truly heal because the pain was never tended to. We never spoke of how selfish I thought it was that a child's greatest protector would willfully turn their back on this gigantic parental responsibility. To condemn her beloved child, me, to never knowing where they came from or to whom they belonged seemed incredible to me. When I think about adoption and adoptees coming out of the fog, it truly was a fog for me. Even as I found myself working in adoption, I was able, fortunately, to find supportive people to explore this new reality. Over the years, swinging wildly from jilted child, lied to over and over, to otherwise loved and cared for child, grateful for all I was given. All of it centered around my birth, one woman's decision to give me up, and another woman's decision to take me in. No parent has the right to deny their child the opportunity to know their own birth story and family history. Just because you feel the need to cry about it doesn't give you the right to lie about it. Both my mothers managed to take the secrets of their bond to their graves. All I could do was live in the wake of their choices. The answer to the question, who am I? I'm Chester Mitchell Jackson, the seventh child born to Desi Lee Mitchell, taken in and raised by Geneva Jackson. And I know both my mothers loved me, did the best they could. But love is not enough. Knowing the truth is better. Thank you.
That was incredible. Aw. Well, I think it's a perfect time for another raffle. So let's get the lights, get your raffle tickets out, and Tony will tell you more.
Yes, everyone knows someone who likes to eat, right? And the Gramercy Tavern is just the place to do it. The Gramercy Tavern is a 9 times James Beard Award winner and has an ever-evolving seasonal menu, warm hospitality, and unparalleled service. Donated by Gramercy Tavern and Danny Meyer's Union Square Hospitality Group. This delectable gift certificate is valued at $200. So get ready to stuff your face at a 5-star restaurant.
All right, here we go. 2402907. All right. Oh my goodness, that's so exciting. I love raffles. Well, all right. Now you can throw your raffle tickets away because that's our last one of the evening. But you will have a chance to win other fabulous prizes, believe it or not.
That's right, Barbara, like a night stay in a mansion
Wow.
or home-baked pie.
Yum. That's right, because you need to check out the Coalition's very first online auction.
That's right. Go to AFFCNY.org/auction.
It's a great way to support the Coalition's meaningful work.
That's AFFCNY.org/auction.
Yep. And the auction goes until the end of November. So you have all of National Adoption Awareness Month to help us raise money.
And bid on pie.
Hi. Be sure to share the auction with your friends and family. All right. So right now, are you going to promise us that you'll tell 3 people about the Coalition and the auction? Yes. All right. And the pie? Yeah. Okay. I hear it's a really good pie.
The pie is mine.
Whoa, oh, don't let this man win that pie.
Go to AFFCNY.org/auction.
Okay. Got all that? Fantastic. All right. We do have one more fabulous story for you tonight, though. It's from Claudia Corrigan Dorsey, who is a birth mother, and she shares just an ordinary day in her life. Here's Claudia with silver linings and appendix.
Hi. So I'm a very recently divorced single mother living with my 4 very recent 2 weeks, living with my 4 adult children who range from the age of 20 to 35 years old. Now, one day over the summer, my oldest woke up feeling really crappy. It was during the god-awful heat wave, so I sent him to rest in the AC. A few hours later, I went to go check on him, and he was clearly in much worse shape than I had previously thought. He was doubled over in pain and pacing the room. He couldn't keep anything down, not even water. So after testing for COVID and the required self-diagnosing Googling, we ran over to the local emergency room where, after the mandatory hours of waiting and more testing, at last it was deemed that it was his appendix that was the culprit. So the hospital scheduled his surgery for the next morning, and I was sent home to wait. It was his first time under the knife, and while it would be routine and laparoscopic, there's always that fear of introducing anesthesia. So thankfully, everything went as planned, and his surgeon called me the next morning to report on his condition. He complained a whole bunch, but healed up, and now he's totally fine. That's a pretty boring story, right? Nothing too exciting there. He got sick, he got better, big whoop. But you see, this is my very firstborn child having his very first surgery. And it was also the first time that I, his mother, was there to share any first with him. The simple act of being able to act the part of his concerned mother was indeed a big whoop, because none of this was ever supposed to happen. Not when my pregnancy started out like this. Claudia, you're pregnant. What are you going to do? A baby is going to ruin your life. These were the first words uttered to me by a trusted family friend upon her basically outing me on my condition. I can't raise your baby, is what my mother said when I told her of the upcoming birth of her first grandchild. This is annoying me. Then she asked, what will the neighbors say? Yeah, I was 19. Yes, I was a art school dropout already. No, I wasn't nearly finished with my education. And yes, I still had to live at home. No, the father was not to be counted on for support. And no, we would not be getting married. Then 3 different doctors at 3 different clinics told me I was too far along and I would be having a baby in September. They were either wrong or lied about my due date, as Max was born in mid-November. But it doesn't matter because the results were the same. I left the building and went home. And I remember walking out of the last clinic and stopping by a diner somewhere around the Flatiron building. And I ordered a grilled Swiss and bacon sandwich. And it came on one of those classic white china plates, you know, with the little green lines around the edge. And I'm pretty sure I had a vanilla egg cream and sipped it as I wondered what I was going to do. And so I did what any nice middle-class girl from the Long Island suburbs does, based on the knowledge gleaned from those formative after-school specials. I literally plucked the idea of adoption from midair as the glorious solution to my immediate and literally belly-pressing problem. Now, adoption, as I understood it at the time, just made logical sense. I clearly was going to have a baby and can look back now and admit that I probably presented as quite a hot mess. I was aware that my own family was seriously dysfunctional and in a not so healthy manner, and that it would be quite unkind to even consider bringing an innocent child into what literally was a shit show. And on the flip side, there were all these lovely couples just ready and waiting in all their life's perfection for a child. And of course, it would be better if I could make someone else's dreams come true at the same time of providing everything for my own baby and not completely screwing up my own life in the process by becoming just another unmarried teenage mother. So clearly, it was the perfect win-win scenario. So I got out the Manhattan phone book and started making phone calls to adoption agencies. The adoption agencies all agreed that indeed it was a good idea to relinquish my baby to adoption. And in fact, they told me, only the strongest, smartest, wisest, most caring mothers are the ones that could make the ultimate sacrifice for their babies. I wanted to be one of those mothers. I wanted to be a strong mother. So I picked the agency with the prettiest name and the perkiest voice on the other side of the phone. And they sent me a plane ticket, and I left everyone I knew and moved to an unknown city, lived among strangers, and relied on the kindness of the adoption agency for the final 2 months of the pregnancy. My mother stopped speaking to me. No one visited. In my life's timeline, we now call that when I went to Boston. I'm not going to bore us all with the repetition of a birth story and perfect fingers and perfect toes. And I'm not going to re-traumatize myself by going into the great details, not that I remember much, about forcing myself to walk out of that hospital empty-handed. And I'm not going to try to remember the final words I whispered to my newborn son before I let him go. I'm not even going to touch on assuming that everyone here, even for one painful second, can imagine how very difficult it might be to go years, decades, even a full lifetime without knowing about the well-being of your first last, and maybe only child. I'm very good at examining the loss and the grief and the heartache. I can tell you about the years of tears and trauma. I literally have made a career out of it. But I really don't live that life of a birth mother anymore. You see, my son came home. I relinquished Max in 1987. He was 48 hours old when he left my arms in the hospital and 72 hours old when I signed the relinquishment consents. I received an update through the agency at 6 months and 1 year. That was it. I learned to be patient and wait. I also learned to Google, and that turned out to be very handy indeed. I found him online in 2004, thanks to Google, and 3 dear internet friends, an adoptive mother, an adult adoptee, and a surrogate mom. It took us 3 days based on the non-identifying information given to me in my Dear Birth Mother letter, some 17 years before. We had direct contact through MySpace back in 2005. He was almost 18. And in 2007, we met for the first time, 19 years, 111 days after I saw him last. Then later that year, I got married and he came to the wedding. Divorced now. He met all his siblings and pretty much everyone else in my life. Came to my 40th birthday party. Visits ebbed and flowed in the next decade or so. Sometimes we lost the thread of connection and communication went silent, as it often happens in even the best of reunions. I suppose it could have ended there. We could have just let it peter away and die out, but we managed to wade through, and instead we both agreed that it was really silly, and we promised not to be so lame again. And our contact became more to increase. We saw him more, and then even more. And then we started to create our own new family traditions, Halloween parties, and annual Star Wars movies in early December. Meanwhile, sadly, his relationship with his adoptive family was becoming increasingly strained, and it pretty much ceased to exist in any healthy manner. He was caring for his elderly adoptive grandparents, and he was started to come to our house for the holidays instead. My other kids would ask him, "When are you moving to New York?" And over time, the answers changed from if to when. And then the time came. His grandparents had both passed, and we rented a U-Haul, packed up his worldly possessions, literally handed in a key, and drove back to New York one final time. It was surreal. Now, on paper, we might call that a failed or disrupted adoption. From a birth parent perspective, honestly, it's pretty much a dream fantasy come true. However, like pretty much all things in life, and definitely in the child welfare arena, almost every gain is built upon a loss, and my family's story is no different. For my family to become whole again, his absence caused a literal hole in his adoptive family. In our story, adoption didn't really work out for any of us. I often say it didn't take, as none of us got what we expected. And then there's the harsh reality that my charmed life represents an adoptive family's nightmare. And sometimes it's hard not to think of myself as a living, breathing birth parent boogeyman. And often I have to accept that for some folks, including probably, sadly, my son's adoptive parents, I truly am. Yet, I would not trade it for the world or all the tea in China or even $1 gazillion. We have coffee every morning together and endless conversations all the day. My kids, all my kids and myself have meshed into a really strong family unit. And unlike many reunions, I believe, we have this confidence that has managed to erode the invasive feelings of doubt and the fear of rejection and actually healed the rifts that time apart has created. And I'm at the point now where I can't possibly imagine not knowing my oldest son, Max. And I can almost imagine a time, or I almost can't imagine a time anymore where I didn't know who or where my child was. Almost. But still, Every moment of my life right now is a little miracle. Every interaction between my kids is literally a stolen moment that was never supposed to happen. Every cup of coffee shared is a bonus of life that I never expected to get. And sometimes something pretty yucky, like emergency surgery, can have an incredible silver lining. That's all I got. Close the book. All right.
Let's bring up all the storytellers at the end of our show. Let's get a round of applause for all these incredible people. Oh my goodness.
So now we party.
And then now we party, but first we just have a couple. Wait, we have a few more things. The silent auction, and we want to bring up Pat O'Brien, who's the executive director of the coalition, and he's going to have a quick announcement. The winners of the silent auction.
Is it all there in the script?
It's right
Oh,
here.
good.
Read this.
I got to start first with the big reveal. Hey, everybody.
Hold on.
I know what you've been covering up.
You know, I felt so bad for so long to invite everybody to AFFCNY's fundraiser this year. This was not a fundraiser. It was a fundraiser, but it was the absolute best fundraiser I've ever been to in my life. Absolutely the best. And you know, it sounds self-serving because I'm the executive director, but I really, really mean that. This was so much more than a fundraiser. It was an education. But it was an education that was entertaining. Thank you, everybody on this. The bravery of the people who had something to say, and Barbara and Tony here. You know, that we turned people's life stories into an education and into something that was entertaining and fun, not that expensive, and it was just a. By the way, I can't see anybody in the audience, but I love that each and every one of you were here today. So I just wanted to share that. All right, now the glasses part. All right, script. All right, here we go. Okay, I'm the executive. Oh no, that we already said. All right, so let's announce some of the what do we call that?
Four
Silent auctions.
winners.
And I'm not going to be silent. Okay. Oh, good. Okay, so
wait,
the winner of
Of
the
the set of 6 Tom Stoner
Yes.
hand blown wine cups is
right. And I would have said that too.
Oh.
You know, I got a little confused, but anyway, it's Susanna Faro.
Oh,
I never asked Susanna how to pronounce the last name.
woo, okay.
Yeah, she is a board member here, and she
Fabulous.
bid before she got here.
Excellent.
All right,
Okay.
now the second one.
Yeah.
Watch me. See
I'm
this.
coming.
Wine from Green Grape Wine and Spirits, and the award winner, the silent auction winner is Michael Gerstenzang. Thank you, Michael, very much. All right, now the third winner, the Patagonia Day Pack.
Patagonia Day Pack.
Okay, and that goes to Tim Stoner. Thank you, Tim. Coincidentally, the same Tim Stoner that made the hand-blown wine glass cups. Oh, I'm sorry. Oh, brothers, look at that.
Wow.
Okay, sorry. All right,
And
and
then
now
the
the
fourth.
fourth prize is the duffel
Duffel bag.
duffel bag.
Fourth
Okay,
winner of the duffel bag.
Tim Stoner.
Woohoo.
All right. And your prizes are waiting for you in the lounge. Okay. Now, also on behalf of the coalition, I want to give special shout outs to our $1,000 level sponsors. Matthew Willis. Thank you, Matthew. I think he's in the audience. And Lisa Maynard And John Sobraski, I believe you are watching us on that beautiful thing where we can have virtual and live at the same time. This was another amazing thing about this event. And never to not say my gratitude enough for the Gerstenzang family for their massive support and sponsorship of this event. And I thank you, Sarah, and I thank you, Michael, so much for all that you do for this coalition. All right. So I want everybody to go out here and please share what you learned here tonight with people you know. And let people know about the auction because they still have until the end of November to purchase stuff for the auction. And that's the fundraising part. But the best part of this evening is nobody leave until you have a chance to chat with our folks here. Are we going to do that in the lounge or are we going to do it in this room?
I think we're gonna do it in the lounge.
The lounge. Oh, good. You get a chance to buy a few drinks down there and a few other things. And I'll continue to try to sell you a raffle ticket, but I want you to know there is no raffle. Okay. Thank you, everybody.
You have been such an incredible, loving, and vocal audience. Thank you so much. And yes, please, let's go to the lounge and meet and talk with our storytellers. Yay, good night.